This is Glean. It looks very much like a Google search bar. And, we're founded by a bunch of Google search engineers, and that's probably why. But it's like Google search across all your internal documents and ChatGPT that generates answers that's grounded in your internal documents. You can trust those answers because we can cite how we're generating all those answers. So Glean is a logged in experience. It wants to know who I am. And we actually built out an org chart because we want to know what team you're on. We want to know if you're an engineer or someone within marketing. And that influences our search result rankings so we can surface the most relevant documentation to you. Glean is connected to all the different data sources like G Drive, like Salesforce, our Glean documentation. So it's connected to all the different data sources that I use. So when I ask questions or search for topics, it can traverse all these different data sources.
So we'll get started. So let me quickly introduce myself and what I do. My name is Ujjwal Bhattacharya. I work in the financial industry. I have been in this IT industry for 20 plus years now, starting from, as we were discussing, starting from IBM, MuleSoft, Salesforce, now in Freedom Mortgage. I was fortunate enough to be part of some generative AI initiatives. And in fact, like ChatGPT came in, right? 2022 November, and that kind of everyone got curious. So started, kind of like investigating. And then with my curiosity, there were some opportunities we got into generative AI initiatives within my organization. And that's how kind of like started. And then eventually we thought, okay, why don't I explore and connect with people and see like what people are thinking about generative AI, because it's a beautiful technology, but there is a lot of confusion going around. Can I take it to production kind of confusion, right? So that's where this whole, initiative I took to kind of like meet people outside of my industry, outside of my company. And I started this back in December. And today is my 27th week where we are meeting. So we typically meet every Thursday, 6 p.m. So that's a quick intro about myself. Our agenda is extremely simple. We'll do a quick introduction, disclaimer, housekeeping, participant introduction, and then its floor is all yours. Jay, thank you for joining, Jay and Rick. From a disclaimer standpoint, again, this whole initiative is my own, nothing to do with my employer, not related. So no position, strategies, or opinion are my employers. Like it's all my personal venture. And this session is being recorded, photographed, and will be shared in social media. So if you're joining, hopefully you're giving me consent to record you and share in social media. I'm also hoping that you're not sharing any IP or confidential information because this is going to be in social. That's pretty much my little disclaimer. I'm not a legal person. I'm a technologist, but I just wanted to, one of my friends actually advised me, hey, you should have a disclaimer. I'm like, okay, let me put some disclaimer. Housekeeping, it's a smaller group, so I'm just going to skip this. Typically, I ask people to be on mute and all. Smaller group, let's be more, let's ask questions. Let's see how we can learn from each other. That's pretty much it. I'm done. So we'll do a quick round of introduction. And maybe I'll start with Rick. I'll start with Rick. Why don't you give a one line about yourself?
Yeah, thanks, Ujjwal. Thanks for having us present today too. So Rick Stelle, account executive here on our Majors East team at Glean. I joined Glean back in January. Prior to that, I spent a little over 6 years at Snowflake. So great to meet everybody. And again, thanks for having us. Jack?
And thanks, Rick.
Yeah, sorry, go ahead. And just FYI, I met Rick in this podcast at some point of time, back in January, maybe January, February, or something like that. So yeah,
about when I joined Glean, I was trying to figure out this whole generative AI space.
Oh, really? Okay, good.
Get up and running.
So thanks, Rick, for taking your time out after your work day and being over here. So really appreciate it.
Right.
Sorry, Jay, I'll just hold you up because you're our guest speaker. So we'll come back to you little later. Sorry for that. Ram Mohan Reddy. So if you want to give a real quick intro of yourself, like one line, that would be really awesome. Okay. Ramon, if you're talking, you're on mute. Else I'll skip to Joel. Joel, you want to give a quick one line intro? Okay. So I'll skip to Reddy Velagala.
Hi.
Hey, Reddy, if you want to give a quick one-liner intro, like who you are, what do you expect out of this session? Something like that.
I'm just exploring generative AI.
Okay, that's good. Okay, cool. So now to our guest speaker, Jay Fielding. So we just got introduced today, and then we found so much of connection, right? From MuleSoft to a little bit of intersection of IBM as well. So Jay, why don't you give one-liner?
All right. Well, thank you. Thanks for having me today. Thanks everybody for joining to hear about Glean and the generative AI capabilities. So a little bit about my background. I've been in IT space for 20 years and it is a small world. You know, I worked at IBM and MuleSoft. I spent a lot of time at AT&T where I was implementing technologies, and then I made the jump over to the startup world and haven't gone back to the big corporations because I've really enjoyed being at startups. I was at MuleSoft in the early days and Snowflake, and now I'm at Glean. And so in my role at Glean, I'm a solutions engineer. So I work hand in hand in the sales team or with an account executive on the sales team. And I get to show customers the technical capabilities of Glean, and I could do that all day and help solve business problems with that.
Awesome. Fantastic. So when I met you, Rick, like I did not know Glean, but when I started looking at it, it's like a massive, right, organization. So these are some of the little, I know like you're going to do a little bit more deep dive on that one, but I found this is what my research says. It's a $5.6 billion company and target towards like growing to $13 billion. So it's a huge, you have customers of Duolingo, Grammarly, Webflow. I think you were saying LinkedIn is also your customer, like Sony, Confluent, whatnot, right? So it's a large organization founded in 2019, but I'm not going to steal the show over here. It's all yours, Rick. So go ahead. Floor is yours.
No, that's perfect. Keep going. I'll just go on mute. You can do it for us. I'm happy to do that.
I'm not going to do that, but I was just excited to share my research as well. Yeah.
I appreciate that. And yeah, it's funny, even in that first couple of weeks of me joining Glean to see where we are at now compared to 6 months ago is a little bit crazy. And just the company's growth. But what I'd like to do is maybe just give a quick couple minutes on the background, a company overview, and really the story of why and how we were founded. And then we'll turn it over to Jay to really walk through showing you Glean itself. So Ujjwal, to your point, the story of Glean and the company itself, we were founded by our CEO, Arvind Jain, who was a Google distinguished engineer on their search team for about 14 years prior to leaving to co-found a company called Rubrik. So a security software company that actually just had their IPO about a month ago. Now, while he was at Google, they have an internal intranet or employee portal solution called MoMA that is essentially an enterprise search offering that allows employees to easily search for and find information. And so when he left and went to Rubrik, he was so frustrated that they didn't have any of those type of capabilities. And there's really nothing out in the market that could solve for that. So just his own personal pain of going and looking for information or that PowerPoint presentation that he saw a couple weeks ago and can't find it now. So he set out to build Glean because at the end of the day, that's not a unique challenge for Rubrik. A lot of large enterprises feel that pain. And so in the recent years, we've raised $350 million in funding. We are powering some of the largest, most innovative companies in the world. I know you mentioned a couple of them already, but companies like NVIDIA, Uber, Databricks, right? And a lot of these organizations had very similar challenges that they were looking to solve for. Um, the biggest one is that most of an organization's knowledge lives in unstructured data,
Okay.
right? The data that's spread across SaaS applications, documents, or even conversations in Slack, Teams, Outlook. Um, and again, my past life, I was at Snowflake. We were solving for a lot of that structured data, and so I felt like a lot of organizations had already gotten to that point where that's in a good position, but nobody was solving for this sort of next frontier of that unstructured data. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
the impact of the business that this has is that oh, workers, your colleagues, waste a tremendous amount of time looking for information. How often have you been on a phone call and somebody asks you a question? Well, I know I saw that somewhere and let me go look for it. Well, now I can't find it, but you spend an hour looking. Then you ask a colleague on Teams or Slack. They spend an hour looking for it. Then they recommend somebody else, and the loop just continues on and on, right? I
The
know.
answer is every day.
Yeah, exactly. Every day, right? And then you magnify that across thousands of employees at these large organizations. It's a massive impact to the business, right? And it slows down operations and decision making. I know personally, things as simple as what's our company's holiday schedule or my expense policy can be a pain to go and find that answer sometime. Or even if I'm on a customer call and they ask about a specific feature and I want to know the roadmap for that feature and I can't answer it on the call. Let me get back to you. And then it's hours until I'm able to get back. And then we have to schedule another call. That happens for everybody within every single industry, right? Um, with that said, generative AI brings a lot of promise to help drive productivity across these enterprises. Um, but it has its own challenges and frankly limitations too. LLMs themselves are reasoning engines, incredibly powerful, but they lack your organization's knowledge or context. So what do? Well, you either hire, you dedicate a team of engineers to go and train that model. That takes a lot of time. It's costly to do. Uh, Not to mention the upfront work, but then keeping up to speed with the daily updates that are constantly happening and changing across the organization. And then trying to build a RAG based solution. It's a technical challenge too, right? Especially when it comes to adhering to security, data governance, permissioning, and your own internal policies that you have for all of these. So, with that said, can you do all of this? Absolutely. I can't tell you how many times in the last 6 months I've had the conversation with, well, Glean is awesome, but we feel like we can do this and we can go build it ourselves. My thoughts on that personally is maybe you can. We did it after all. It took us about 100 of the world's best search engineers. So engineers from Meta, Google, Uber. It took them about 2 years to do it. And again, a few $100 million in funding. And so if you have those resources, you have that time, then yes, I'd love to see what you come up with. Or the alternative is we did the work for you, right? You can be up and running in a matter of weeks. You can leverage our native connectors that we have. You can leverage our RAG framework that we built on your behalf. And so with that said, that's where Glean comes in and where I stop talking and pass it over to Jay to show you this. But any questions before I do that?
I think this is amazing because the biggest challenge of generative AI, though it sounds so sexy and beautiful, right? The biggest challenge is evaluation, right? Who decides whether the content that is generated is correct or not? And then if it's not correct and if it reaches to someone who it should not go, then what is the impact? Right? And that's where people are getting stuck, right? I mean, I've talked to so many people and everywhere getting the same thing. So product adoption issue, right? And also like finding those use cases where probabilistic result is uh, not even an option, right? I need deterministic answers. So can it be a possibility to kind of fill in over there? But let's see, what Glean has to offer, and then we'll take forward from there. We'll have some interesting questions and answers like that.
Yeah, well, to your first point, that's kind of well, do I just throw all of the data in there and run a risk of somebody seeing something they shouldn't? Or do I keep all of that information out and then run the risk of a response not really being as accurate as it should be, or worthwhile as it should be, right? So 100%. Let me stop sharing, Jay, so you can take over.
All right. But interesting discussion. And I think it's one we should probably pull the thread on so that we can, get into some more of those details. And I can describe how Glean can address some of those concerns. So this is Glean. It looks very much like a Google search bar. And, we're founded by a bunch of Google search engineers, and that's probably why. But it's like Google search across all your internal documents and ChatGPT that generates answers that's grounded in your internal documents. And I'll show you how you can trust those answers because we can cite how we're generating all those answers. So Glean is a logged in experience. It wants to know who I am. And we actually built out an org chart because we want to know what team you're on. We want to know if you're an engineer or someone within marketing. And I'll show you how that influences our search result rankings so we can surface the most relevant documentation to you. Glean is connected to all the different data sources like G Drive, like Salesforce, our Glean documentation. So it's connected to all the different data sources that I use. So when I ask questions or search for topics, it can traverse all these different data sources. Let's jump into the Glean chat feature. So Glean can make everybody in your organization more productive, but we really see an outsized impact when Glean makes engineers more productive, or it makes your sales team more productive and they can sell more, or your support team, they can resolve issues faster. They can make your customers happier because they can help resolve those issues and give your customers the information they need when they call in for different requests. So I'll go through each one of these use cases in the demo, but let's start with the engineering use case. So I'll ask Glean, I'll be like, all right, what should I demo to an engineering team? So we've documented the engineering use case when we're working with software engineers at different companies like Uber, LinkedIn. We've seen the impact that we've had, and we really want to make them more productive in their IDE so they don't have to leave their IDE and go look for search for customer requirements. We can improve their, and there we go. We're citing all the different sentences that we're generating because we've told OpenAI, this is actually using OpenAI 4.0 on the back end. So there's a little interplay here in this RAG architecture. So I ask a question, Glean sends it to GPT 4.0 and says, okay, well, what search term should I use so I can find the data to answer this question? GPT-4 says, make this search request. So we do that. It might be one, it might be two, three different searches that we need to do. It can be in English and Spanish. And so we can really find all the relevant information that we need. And then we found 6 different documents. We even found some information in a Slack channel that was helpful. So we found data that was in a transcript of a call that we had with an engineering team. So we used those 6 documents, sent the most relevant snippets in our prompt back to GPT 4.0 to synthesize this answer. And then we cited each one of these sentences that were generated. So this gets to the point that we were talking to earlier about, can we trust these answers? And as long as they're cited, we can, and we can start to improve these by giving feedback. Maybe we missed something in the search results, or maybe the actual synthesized answer wasn't helpful. So I can give that explanation. Let's show you some more demo stuff. So The onboarding and ramp time. This is great because Rick and I are pretty new to Glean. We had to go through this onboarding use case, or we had to onboard at Glean, get to learn the product. And so I had to ask questions all the time. And I use Glean as my primary data source to ask these questions. So let's say I'm a new engineer, and one of the first things I need to do is start submitting some code. So I can ask Glean, how do I submit my first PR? So Glean knows that I'm an engineer. And when I say PR, I mean pull request to GitHub. If I was in marketing and I said the same question, it would know I'm talking about a press release and give different instructions. So this is really the power of the knowledge graph. And I might pause there if anybody has any questions on how that.
This is beautiful, right? So not only knowledge graph of the documents, but also knowledge graph of the employee base, right? And how
Right.
their roles and responsibilities, kind of like a RACI chart for the employee, is fed into the system. But then it can constantly get updated, right? People move from one place to another place. Like, okay, now this guy is in engineering, tomorrow they're in product, tomorrow they move to like monitoring or like whatever, infosec. How do you keep
Yes.
updated with that?
So as you move, you actually benefit from the documents your team you moved to have been searching for. So if I moved from solutions engineering to security, and I searched for, our SOC 2 report, well, every time somebody else in that engineering or the security team had searched for the SOC 2 report, the one they were using, and maybe they slacked about it, hey, share this with the customer. This is our latest SOC 2 report. And all these signals Glean uses. So as soon as I move over there and I search for SOC 2 report, I will benefit from what the team has been searching for and or the documents they've been working with related to that topic. I might have to show this in detail because it's hard to get that how we actually do this. But maybe I'll do this. Okay, so I'll go into the search, and this pulled up. This pulled up 10 documents. Here's 5 on this page. So we start to collect the activity data, and I'm going to go into a debug mode, which will explain the search results. So we have a score on each one of the documents. And so this is my developer onboarding, which was popular. We do a keyword search. So it scores high on keyword, but this one wasn't as high as some of these other documents. Then we have a vector search. This one got 0 on vector search, which is kind of a little puzzling. Why did it get vector developer onboarding? Maybe it didn't have anything specifically on the keyword for the for PR in it. But what it does have is a high popularity score. Oh, well, you have a negative popularity score on this other one. PageRank, this is the Google search algorithm for public internet search, where you rank based on different anchors or how many links you have to the different documents. So like we want to look at your instant messages so that we can see if you're sharing links or if documents are linked together. And this is the team affinity score. So my team works with this one a pretty good amount and doesn't work with these documents. The user activity, how many times I've clicked on it. I haven't clicked on this one, I guess. So these are some of the details about how Glean calculates and finds the most relevant data.
So you have already answered the explainability part, right? So that was one of the popular questions, right? I mean, how do you explain what is the result that is coming out? Beautiful. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay.
So I know like you're going to go into the details. I have I think it's a very simple question is like, like people from Google coming out and of course, like building this Glean, it looks like Google. So it's exactly, I was pretty confused initially, right? It looks so much like Google. Why is Google not building something like this? They are the search masters, right? I mean, like we have been doing Google No, there is a keyword now, just Google, right? I mean,
Yes.
the word is already there. I mean, we don't say search. So why do you think that people are not building over there? Same,
Well,
same. I think similar to Perplexity. Like, why do we even have Perplexity? Why don't Google build something like that?
yeah, very good
I-
question. Or
It's just an open question. I don't know. Like,
yeah.
you don't have to answer representing Glean, but it's a, you know, whatever. I mean, give your thoughts or don't give your thoughts. That's fine.
So I'll give my thoughts. Anybody else, feel free to jump in. But what I was showing you there is a different algorithm for enterprise search than internet search.
Hmm.
On a topic like, let's say you're looking for developer productivity, you might have 10 million hits on the internet for the best developer productivity documents. But inside an organization, you might have 10. So we have to look at different signals, and we actually look at 50 different signals. How can I go? So in our knowledge graph, we want to look at that document popularity, but maybe it's only 10 clicks.
Hmm.
Then we want to see the people on your team that work with that document, because maybe not you, maybe somebody else. So people on teams tend to work with it. So that's that department affinity. Location. I mean, Google Internet Search uses that. You look for, a good restaurant in your area. They're very good about that. But if you say, give me a workout program, Google doesn't know your age. So, or your fitness level. So you might not get one that's age appropriate or where you're at
The
in your
context.
Yeah,
It's all about the context, right? That's what you're saying.
exactly.
Yeah. And that's exactly why Glean is really focused on internal use cases and not necessarily being an embedded search capability on a company's website, right?
Mhm.
Because we're not going to know who your end user customer is coming into it. So the search experience isn't going to be as good. And we are really focusing on those internal use cases.
And I think this is just my thought, right? I mean, Microsoft can also build something like this, right? Because they have all the data, starting from SharePoint, starting from Excel, starting from Word, everything. But I think what Glean you guys are trying to do is not only Microsoft, not only Google, but now you're integrating with Slack, you're integrating with the conference, which Microsoft is never going to do, right?
Yeah.
I think so. That's what I think. Maybe
Yeah.
they.
Yeah. So somebody once said that if you have a lot of competition and everyone's trying to copy you, you're doing something right. And we certainly are here. So we see a lot of competition popping up. I get asked a new name of when I'm having conversations, and I haven't heard of most of them.
Right.
Microsoft, Google, AWS. Yeah, I'm sure they're building something like this. We've been building this for the last 5 years. And the first thing we started out, so going back to sort of the evolution of the journey, we started as purely enterprise search. So this was even before really generative AI was what it is today. And
Yep.
conversational AI piece of it, the chat, it was enterprise search. And what we started out doing was building native connectors for all of those applications. And so we have that horizontal reach across, I think we have 120 native connectors now that are going to not only be able to connect to an index and pull the data from the sources, but they're going to leverage the permissions that exist within those sources as well, too. And so a lot of the other companies just haven't made the investment in those connectors itself. So that's probably one of the biggest differentiators that we had in the early days. And then we layered on more of the generative AI capabilities to it.
Which is the modern, latest and greatest with photo and all.
Yeah. And to your question on Google, though, we partner great with Google. I mean, Google themselves loves Glean because at the end of the day, you can be hosted on GCP, whether it's a Glean hosted, we host on your behalf on GCP, or you host on your own GCP environment. So they're happy to see Glean because it's driving consumption for them, right? At the end of the day. So
Absolutely.
and AWS too. We're available on AWS as well.
Right. So I have seen like there is a partnership going on with Glean and Google Cloud. That was one of the questions. So you covered it. So great. Yep. Perfect. Jay, please go ahead.
All right. Yeah, I'm just getting started here. So
But I love the explainability part. My question, related question is like, who would be interested? I mean, I know it's important, but who would be interested in that explainability? Or who would even understand all these details? As a consumer, would I understand or would I care?
You shouldn't care. You should just ask your question and know that it's working with the documents within your company
Hmm.
and have confidence that it's generating answers from the most relevant documents.
Yeah. What I would care about as a user, at the end of the day, I'm in sales role, right? I don't need to see the ranking behind it. I don't need to know exactly how it's working. I just want to know that in my search result, the first few responses are what I'm looking for. We hear customers say all the time that we didn't even know Glean had a second page because what I was looking for was right there in the first three results when I was looking for it.
Hmm.
Uh, so yeah, users typically don't really care as much about how we got to those answers as long as we got the correct answers. But we do have the ability for users to give feedback as well on, hey, was this a good response? You
Yeah.
see thumbs up, thumbs down right there. So if it wasn't necessarily what they were looking for, then that'll kind of train the system as well to be able to share. Yeah, there you go. Jay showed it now.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay. So that now re-ranks all the page results or the search results.
Mhm.
So follow-up question would be like, now I have connected with my internal documents and then I'm searching and getting answers. Will there be use cases where I kind of like connect my internal procedures and policies, etc., and build a search bot or a chat bot for my external facing customers? Does people do that, or will someone do that? And why not?
So
Yep.
we have a library of task specific um, AI apps like this IT assistant, and this one just looks at our IT policies, but this is still internal.
Hmm.
So we
So my question is, if you're so good at searching documents and generating answers, so can this be also serviced to the external facing client facing chat application? So for example, customer comes in and say, well, what happened to my order?
yeah.
Logs in to the website and say what happened. Can it be used in that particular purpose as well, or is it like still limited to internal? And if it's only internal, then why? Like, why not expose it to the external third parties, like the clients?
So the short answer is we don't um, recommend customers use this externally, because when I showed you all that algorithm for surfacing the most relevant documentation, we would lose half of that math in it, because when we're working with external customers, they might not be logged in. And if they are logged in, we don't
Let's
know.
assume they're logged in.
Okay.
Let's That's an assumption. So I have authenticated the customer logged in. So now, can this be used for that purpose? And if the current scope is like internal only, I'm fine. I'm just curious to know.
Yeah. The current scope is internal only. Um, but we get asked that regularly. They're like, well, you figured out a great way to do an enterprise search. And we agree. We're pretty excited about our approach. But when they say external, yeah, we're focused on the internal right now because we feel that's where our biggest differentiation is.
Okay, sounds good.
And you mentioned Microsoft. So I'll bring one up. This is from a Microsoft presentation back in May, and they do something similar. So they'll do a keyword search. We do a keyword search. They'll do a vector search. So if you're looking for car guides, but all you have is automobile manuals, keyword doesn't hit, but the vector search knows the semantic meaning, knows their near neighbors, and returns those. So then we rank those, but our re-ranking is different. And this just kind of shows that based on some of these standard benchmarks, keyword search does the poorest job, then vector search does better.
Mhm.
Combining them both does even better. But then what Microsoft claims that improves their search relevance is they use a Bing machine learning model to do the re-ranking. So our big difference is that PR request is going to mean uh, a pull request, or a PR is going to mean a pull request to engineers, and a press release to marketing, and they don't get that without the knowledge graph and those personalized search results.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
So
Sounds good.
yeah. All right. So that's how we differentiate, because people always ask, how are we different than Copilot? Well, we feel like
Yeah, that's a common question, right? Because yeah, I know, like you have so much content to share, but typically, if you look at it, pretty much all the organization either have Google or Microsoft as their office applications, right? And that's where all the data resides, whether it's Teams or Google Meet, or whether it's SharePoint or Google Drive or whatever it is. All the material is over there. They have the organization structure. They have everything. So it's like easy. They have the data, but I think it's all about the focus and what kind of product that we want to do. This is my opinion, because Microsoft being a Microsoft, they have so many other things to worry about. Whereas Glean is now focused on this particular domain and they're specializing in this particular area. And that's what I feel.
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely. All right. So I'll go back to my engineering use case. So if I'm an engineer and I'm working on another differentiation Copilot, is we have so many connectors, and our connectors are a little bit different. When we connect to an underlying data source, we want to know that we'll read all the documents you give us access to. We want to know the security. We want to know what groups have what permissions to what documents and who's a member of what group. And we mirror those permissions within our search indices. And then we want to know the metadata: who created what document, who's viewed what document, how many times have the document been clicked on. And you kind of saw earlier how we use that into how that metadata feeds into our search result rankings. So let's build a new connector. If I say, again, I'm a new engineer, so what API should I work with to index documents? So this will do a search. It says, you need to work with the bulk index documents API. And it even gives me some ways to actually build some custom with a code. This is just using a curl command, but how to interact with that API. It gives me the document model and references.
This is coming from a document somewhere. Yeah. If you can click on that, like what is the citation for this one? I'm just trying to think, because this is a very common problem in an industry, right? Any company that you have gone to, like there are so many APIs. I do not know which one is the correct one to call, right? Or which version of this one, right?
Yep.
So I need a developer portal. Someone needs to manage the developer portal. We often do a extremely poor job in managing developer portals. That's what I've seen, like in tools and technologies. We do a very bad job in documentation and developer portals.
Yeah.
So does that
It's a
solve
challenge.
this problem?
You can just automatically generate the document, get your Swagger doc. But that's only half the story. And, like number 2 is really this is our document portal for the API. But then we actually use some of the GitHub.
Can you click on that bulk indexing document? Let's see what is in there.
Yeah. This is our developer portal. Developers.
The Glean's developer portal.
Yes.
Okay. So you still need a developer portal, is what I'm seeing. Like you still need some developer portal. Now it makes it your life easier to search.
Yes.
Okay. But you just cannot have nothing and think that, okay, things will happen magically.
Yeah. But this also includes some of our internal documentation.
Sure.
And it includes some GitHub Markdown information as well.
Okay.
Very complete answer. And that's what you're looking for. But maybe even though we found all these different documents, I still have a question. I want to talk to a developer who's an expert at this API just to confirm things. So I say, who is the expert or the indexing API? And we can kind of see Jamala has written some documents here. He's the co-contributor. But maybe we want to know who's joining calls, who's answering questions on Slack, who's authoring documents, and it's actually a different person than the actual developer. And that's Neil. He's on our vertical, and there's some information about Neil. I could say, well, why is Neil a root expert in fixing a? I love this answer because this is like that knowledge graph. I'm using it to explain people's relationships to the data.
This is mind blowing.
Yeah, we think it's pretty special too.
This is amazing. So basically, now you are connecting Slack with the GitHub, with the developer portal, and coming up with a consolidator. So consider an expert of the indexing API and due to this extensive involvement in contributions of the development, etc. So now you are also looking at what are the sources over here. Let's see. So you have a Confluence page, you have a document, you have Slack. I think that is Slack, right? How do I know? Oh, so that was a previous question. How do I know? Oh, what is number 2? Is that a follow-up question or a previous question?
So we have the ability to create answers within Glean's document corpus. So we have some knowledge management features where you can create a collection or an answer. So this isn't an answer. It was actually built by Patrick, but I guess maybe, or was last updated by Patrick. Maybe it was actually created by Neil.
I see. So basically, it's like creating pages. It says something about the. No, I did not get that last part.
So if you want an authoritative answer, you, because sometimes you might, I could have shown this in that debug mode. We will label documents as collaborative or as answers. So if you ask a specific question, then you want to use the documents that are classified as answers to actually answer your question versus a document that might be a collaborative document, like a product roadmap.
Got it. Okay. Makes sense.
Yep. And we do collections for all sorts of things. Like if we're doing an event that's coming up, like Glean Illuminate.
Yeah, heard about that.
Okay, great. So like we have all our
In my little research today. Yeah.
So this will link together multiple documents. It's helpful to organize the data, so we can help curate your documents.
Does it also like go out in the internet and search for results about Glean or whatever the context is?
Not here, but you could do that in another place. So if I was in chat and I wanted to use the public knowledge,
Okay.
so I could say, what were the interest rates for the last 30 years? So now I'm going to GPT-4o, which the cutoff of their knowledge, I think, was a few months back or so.
Right.
But yeah, this is now just a proxy, but it's a secure way to give an enterprise access to GPT-4o because now you can monitor who's searching for what. And you can also put some guardrails on that. So we're using GPT-4o to synthesize answers on your documents, but you can also use the power of GPT-4 to just ask general knowledge questions from public data.
Awesome.
All right. So I could do a little bit more code generation with the engineering use case. It can help you find relevant snippets of code. It can summarize. This is great when you say summarize all the feature requests from a specific customer that you're working with. Or explain, why we built this code. What were the customer requirements for this feature?
I think I got this one. So let's maybe like, if you want to dive a little bit more in the other areas, we'll run out of time. So that's really good.
Okay.
There's so much to discuss.
And I might skip over the sales one because
Sure.
I think
Yeah.
Rick's the only sales guy here. But we can, well,
Nobody cares about us sales guys. I get it. No, I think the support is a better one anyway, Jay. So I'm good with that.
okay, sure. I'll just do one cell phone. Create an email. You could do like with the notes from a follow-up meeting or to a CIO list the features, the top 3 features of Glean, the features in a table format, include links to our product to, I'll use R. I was going to say Glean, Glean's product documentation. So not that sales guys needed to have an easier job, but they can be more
This is
productive.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like I use ChatGPT for everything pretty much nowadays. Like, so
Yeah,
I mean, this is ChatGPT, right? I mean, why would I use Glean? Is it like bringing in the documentation link? Okay, I get it. Okay,
Yep.
and the context around it.
yep. It's yep. Look,
It's
it's
also like
linking your.
looking at the email. Is it like looking at the email and generating the response from that email, or no?
It's generating the email based on our internal documentation.
Okay.
It did use a public site. We have web crawlers, and we crawl all our public help documents and stuff like that. So that's part of our part of the body of knowledge that Glean is using to answer these questions.
Perfect. So, okay. So I know like we talked about the chat, just keeping the time in mind, we have like
Okay.
maybe 10-15 minutes left. So do you want to like explore a little bit more on the other sides or the other features? Any other?
Sure. And I'll end with one thing. So the support, we can help you summarize tickets. We can
Mhm.
help suggest resolutions for tickets. And we have widgets for Zendesk, for Service Cloud. So we can really meet the users where they're at in Jira. If they're working with Jira, we can meet them there. We can use that. We have a native search replacement for Jira. So Glean can be your search as well as a widget to help you resolve uh,
Yeah,
incidents.
perfect.
And
What is the document ingestion process? Like this is like massive. So what you're showing is like you're connecting to the whole ecosystem. First of all, like what are the challenges that you're facing? For example, like people not no, I do not want to expose all my documents to Glean, right? So those kind of challenges versus like adoption. And then even if someone agrees that, okay, no, this is fantastic, let's do that. Then what is the document ingestion process?
Yeah. You know what's a funny, not funny, but a common roadblock we run into is that Glean is so great at giving visibility to everything.
Yeah,
Once you get into InfoSec conversations and
exactly, right?
charge of permissionings, they start to get a little bit nervous about, well, how confident am I in my permissionings? And so
So
sometimes we
this
use
is a
the,
completely SaaS model, right? Where can I deploy it in my ecosystem? Like
yeah,
companies.
you can host, most of our customers do end up hosting it on their own AWS VPC or their own GCP project. But you do have an option of having a Glean hosted where we would host it on your behalf on our GCP project. Um, but we walk through this sort of a buffer window before really turning it over to all of the users to work with you and your team on identifying those gaps. So we have ways to have some best practices before just giving free reign and access to everything and then anyone.
Hmm,
yeah,
perfect. Yeah, InfoSec is going to be not big for us, right? Initially, but because like this is massive. This is massive what you're showing. And not only massive, now you gain a complete knowledge of the organization, which is great and which is also scary for organizations, right? Because with the data privacy and security issues and all the breaches that are going on, like, I don't know, like, I mean, InfoSec guys, right?
Oh yeah. Well, the beautiful part about Arvin, where I mentioned earlier, before joining Glean, he co-founded Rupert. So he has a security background. And from day one, security was top of mind for everything that he designed on the platform. So yes, you always have to go through those InfoSec reviews. We haven't had anybody not give us the pass in grade on the InfoSec reviews, but you have to go through it.
Yeah, it's a challenge. Okay, cool.
Okay.
So you're showing the data sources. So basically, what I understand is like, okay, you do the add the data source, you connect to this document, sorry, connect to this ecosystem, and I'm done. So it will start, grabbing all this information and create this knowledge graph, create the vendor, vectorize the data, build these ranks, etc. My question was more towards two things, right? In the biggest challenge of vector was like the embeddings, and when the model changes, your embeddings has to change as well, and then you have to like create a whole vector data set. So that is one. So is that all seamless? I believe, right? So you are already taking care of this. All this like nuances behind the scenes are
Yeah,
already taken.
yeah, you don't have to worry about a chunking strategy with
Yeah,
different.
exactly, right.
Yeah,
Chunking strategy and all the vectorization. So tomorrow, if you bring in a model O versus like a model OX, whatever it is, all these documents that has been ingested, do you have to go through run? Like, will there be a downtime? Like, okay, now I'm migrating from model O to model O.1,
oh
and I have to go
yeah,
through a downtime, and okay, now the documents are being upgraded, and the vector indexes are being upgraded, or whatever is going on.
yes. So no, you don't have to do that. It doesn't apply. It's a different architecture. So for your text embeddings for your vector database, if you go from like GPT-3 to GPT-4, you
Correct.
switch text embedding model. So Glean is a single tenant deployment. So we'll deploy Glean just for your organization. And we include a text embedding model that's based on BERT. And so it does the one-way text embedding, and it's trained on, so it comes with like 50,000 words, English words out of the in the model, but then it learns new words, like your company specific words, as we read your documents. So that's how our vector search works, and you don't have to update it if you switch models because we have our own text embedding model.
What happens if you come up with a newer version of the text embedding model?
Then I guess everything has to change.
That
But
was my question, because that is a biggest pain point, right? I mean,
yeah, but this is the document that describes how we deploy our own text embedding model, and we see once we are trained, once we read the documents you give us access to,
mhm.
our vector search result relevancy scores are like incredible, and then we fine tune it based on your click and your activity. After 12 months, the scores are even better.
Okay, so it's like constantly upgraded and fine tuned. But
Yes.
foundationally, if the vector embedding, you come up with a new vector embedding, you say, okay, I'm deprecating the older version of the embedding models. Now you have a new vector embedding. Does a client need to go through that? So if
Oh,
I'm just thinking, like, if I use a SaaS based, you know, implementation, I'm thinking like Glean is already taking care of. But if it's a
yeah.
customer hosted environment, then I have to like build some process around it. Is it like something like that? Or is it seamless?
I haven't run into that issue yet. Maybe it's
Mm.
because we just take care of it behind the scenes, or maybe we haven't had the disruptive upgrades yet. But that's a good question.
Okay. And same question, I think a similar question falls under the knowledge graph, right? So whatever the technology that we are using behind this, so is it like a proprietary knowledge graph or something that we can choose, like as an organization, that okay, I
So,
want my own knowledge graph or something like that.
so it's an optimized knowledge graph. So it's not like Neo4j, the popular graph database, but it's an optimized knowledge graph. And the way you interact with it is just by querying within Glean or using our search API.
I'll just shoot a few more questions that goes in my mind because we are running out of time. So next is like, okay, now you have ingested a bunch of data. And going back to the first question, like the organizational structure, and you showed okay, engineering team versus infosec team versus a admin team, right? How do you organize this data so that I can create boundaries around data boundaries around sets of data? For example, how does the permissioning work?
So like Rick doesn't have access to our GitHub. So if he searches for some of those same things that I was looking for, he's not going to have the GitHub documents returned as part of his answers that he gets.
Oh, okay. So, okay, I see. Interesting. Oh, okay, maybe I was thinking wrong. So I was thinking you're collecting all this information like from different data sources and then creating this massive data set. So you're not doing that. You're on demand going ahead and searching for documents based on access, based on the organization that I belong to, and then based on the permissions that I have. Is that correct?
We're doing the pre-processing more towards the first um, architecture. We do collect. Well, we do read a massive amount of documents that you give us access to. We create those search indices. They
Okay.
are
So let's
initial.
let's assume that Rick is not assume, right? Rick is sales. I am from architecture. You're from architecture. So let's take that. So I'll play a role of product owner, right? So Rick is sales. I'm product owner. You are architecture. You have access to GitHub. Rick has access to sales materials, whatever, and I have product roadmap, right? So now, as an organization, when I onboard Glean, I give access to GitHub. I give access to SharePoint. I give access to the whatever other SharePoint, right? Basically, I give access to two things for now. Let's assume three things, right? I give access to SharePoint, Confluence, and GitHub. So Glean goes ahead and starts collecting information, creates the massive data sets, vectorize the data. Now it's ready to go. Now, when Rick is searching or when Jay is searching, he has access to GitHub. Good. And Rick is searching here, he doesn't have access to GitHub. But then the data has already been collected and put it into the massive data set. Is there a definition of that user permission and access controls which is already applied in GitHub, also applied in the massive data set? And how do you do that?
So yes, that those permissions are enforced and the documents are filtered out that Rick doesn't have access to. So none. So when he asks a question around the indexing API, he'll just get documents that he has
But
access to on the
yeah,
GitHub.
but how is that working? Like, what is the procedure or like process behind it so that as an admin of Glean, someone
Yeah.
knows, okay, how to control it?
So when we our connectors, when we connect to these different, when we connect to GitHub, we'll uh, we'll connect at an admin level and say, give us access to all the documents you want us to
Everything,
read.
right?
Yeah,
Everything,
everything. We can red list, green list, do,
whatever. Okay.
it. So everything. But then we say, who has access to that? Who are all the members? That's the second thing we ask for, um, what groups have access to it. And then we have um, a unique ID for Rick, and we'll map Rick's ID across Salesforce, SharePoint, Slack. And then when we try to see what he has access to within GitHub, his email ID will not be one of the users within GitHub that has access to that.
Hmm, I see.
And
And
this
so
is like
basically, the whole AD group is kind of like mapped within Glean somehow.
correct. And this is like how Rubric works. Our founder, we have a bunch of engineers that came from Rubric.
Hmm.
So they do this data security where they have this common ID across multiple applications
Hmm.
that they connect to so that they can secure the data.
But
Or they
then,
can,
but then the data set is common, right? The
yes,
whole data set is common. So basically, you are doing a on-demand filtration of data when I put in the request based
yeah,
on my AD group access controls that I've put in.
yeah. So I can show you where that filtering occurs. Yeah, it's just one search index, and that's one vector database. So all the questions get asked of it, but the results that come back get filtered based on.
What happens if someone says, like, from an organization that no, I don't like the idea of like one big massive data set. There might be leaks or whatever, right? So can I create multiple data sets? Does Glean provide that option?
You can run multiple Glean instances, but typically they'll test and validate our permissions
see.
model, and they'll make changes and see if that permission model is reflected in real time. And so that way they can validate those permissions are enforced. And once they do that, they feel comfortable having one data set that can be searched because the permissions will be respected.
Okay, sounds good. Yeah, you were showing something.
Oh yeah, the last thing I wanted to show. So we talked about search, we talked about generating answers. The next place where our platform is going is taking actions. So if I go back to that IT assistant
Mm-hmm.
and I look at the details,
Mm-hmm.
so I can create a library of task-specific assistants, and I can give it some prompt engineering in the instructions. Then I can give it some actions. So I can create an email or a Jira ticket. So when I'm interacting with this, I can say, my laptop is broken. Please submit a request to replace it. So those actions are just API. They're using API specs. And now I can create a Jira ticket. So we go from search results to answers to now automations.
Awesome. So yeah, agentic framework is like all hot right now. So yeah, I mean, these are really good use cases of agentic. What is the pricing model? So is it like per user or per number of documents that is ingested? Like, how does it work, Rick? I mean,
Yeah, it's a
if
per
you want to say per user.
pricing model. Yep. So doesn't matter how many connectors you have. We actually
How much data we are pulling, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, one data source, probably not a great fit for Glean, frankly. It's not a ton of content sprawl you're solving for. But multiple data sources, yeah, it doesn't affect the pricing at all. The only things that really do affect the pricing is, do you want to have Glean host it on your behalf? Are you going to self-host it in your own AWS or GCP project? And then also, are you going to use Glean's key or are you going to use your own key? So there's a number of different factors to it.
All right. That was amazing.
Thank you.
I'm glad it was helpful. I know I had a few questions come to me too in the chat, so hopefully we were able to answer all of them. What I would tell you that if you have any additional questions, you can reach out to me, myself on LinkedIn or Jay, also rick.steele@glean.com. Happy to answer any additional questions that you might have. And again, Ujjwal, I just want to thank you for having us today. It's great.
I'm blessed to have all of you over here. So this is my honor. So thank you so much for being here and taking the time out on a Thursday evening after your work. So really appreciate that, Jay.
Oh, well, thank you.
Great.
I enjoyed it.
Well, have a great night, everybody.
Same here. Bye-bye. Take care.
All right, bye, everyone.